Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the forum held by the Greater Silver Spring Democratic Club. This is our 15th year of doing this. I'd like to thank our co-sponsors who helped out.
Hold the microphone low. Microphone.
Women's Democratic Club, the Montgomery County Green Democrats, District 20 Breakfast Club, Montgomery County Young Democrats, District 20 Caucus. I'm going to give each one of the council members 10 minutes to introduce themselves. Or start.
So good evening, everyone. Good evening to the Greater Silver Spring Democratic Club members. Thank you so much for coming out and all of the co-hosting organization. Thank you to those near and far and those tuning in virtually. I'm so glad to be here with my colleagues after such a long but eventful day. Thank you all for the work that you've done. For those who don't know who I am, Laurie-Anne Sayles, council member at large, representing over 1 million plus residents. County. I live in the city of Gaithersburg. Used to be on the Gaithersburg Council, and now I'm honored to represent everyone as the only woman in the at-large space. I was appointed to the Economic Development Committee, the newly formed Economic Development Committee chaired by Councilmember Natalie Bonnie Gonzalez. And I also serve on the Health and Human Services Committee, where I've been named the lead for eliminating disparities in public health. I'm the daughter of proud Jamaican immigrants. My daughter is a proud graduate of MCPS schools, Montgomery College, and the Universities of Shady Grove by way of College Park, University of Maryland. Go Terps. And what else? I ran on a SMART agenda. My agenda was about strengthening our commitment to education from cradle to career and beyond, making a living in our county more affordable, advancing local food production in our ag reserve, revitalizing our economy post-pandemic, and tackling climate change through multimodal transportation infrastructure solutions. It's a mouthful, but I was able to achieve all of that and more in my first budget, and so grateful to be here with you all this evening and look forward to answering your questions throughout the night.
Good evening, everybody. Hello, Silver Spring Democratic Club and friends. I'm Evan Glass. I'm a neighbor. I live right up Flower Avenue and have the honor of serving in my second term and serving as council president. And I'm delighted to have these two council members as colleagues. And I am really excited to be presiding over this council right now, which is halfway through the first year, believe it or not, in which we have a majority new council, a majority women council, and the most diverse council we have ever had. And so, yeah, that is a thanks to all of you, the voters of Montgomery County, because 2 years ago, when I introduced the charter amendment to increase the size of the council by adding 2 districts, I knew that we needed more representation. I knew that we needed more diversity. So we created 2 positions, and you certainly filled them with incredible individuals who I'm proud to call colleagues, friends. And so we'll talk more, I know, about what's been going on at the council, but with this new council, I am serving as president, and I'm also serving as chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee, knowing that we have a lot more work to do to make sure that we're all safe on our roads. This year alone, we've had more than 200 individuals who were hit, 4 people tragically killed just this year. So we have a lot more work to do. The environmental front, we have a lot more work to do to make sure that we reduce emissions by 80% by 2027 and reduce them completely by 2035. So those are things that I'm working on the Transportation and Environment Committee. And I'm also on the Economic Development Committee. When we formed this council, when we added 2 new people, I realized that we needed to have some changes. We put in 2 new people. So the first thing I did was create the Economic Development Committee so that we can work on bringing new jobs, good paying jobs, supporting small businesses, supporting minority businesses, talking about closing the wage gap, and talking about bringing Fortune 500 companies to Montgomery County as well. It's an all above strategy, and we need that in order to increase our tax base to do good things here in the town. And so when I created the Economic Development Committee, there was so much interest from individuals, from colleagues, that it quickly became the largest committee on the council. Look forward to tonight's conversations and speaking with you all, taking the time to come out on gorgeous spring evening. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Stewart. I am your District 4 representative on the County Council, and I'm glad to be here with you all this evening. So 6 months have gone by, and it has been a very busy 6 months for this County Council. Glad to say that I'm chairing the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee, as well as serving with Council President Glass on Transportation and Environment. In addition to that, this year I serve as the board chair for the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Board. That is a regional organization of 24 jurisdictions in the DMV area. And we work together on issues such as housing, climate change, and actually COG supports the Bike to Work Day, which starts tomorrow morning, and that I think all of us are getting up bright and early for. Anyway, I like to work with my colleagues regionally on these issues and bring what we learn home to Montgomery County. As I said, it's been a busy first 6 months, and just to touch on some of the highlights, and I know we'll get into some of the specifics in a moment, but I know public safety is something, I've talked to a number of you who are here tonight about that issue. Councilmember Glass and I did hold a public safety community conversation in March to talk to people, answer questions, share information, and think about next steps, particularly in the Silver Spring area. We do have a recording of that day, as well as the public safety walk we took with Commander McBain and Captain Reed in the neighborhood to learn what the police were doing there. In addition to that, yesterday I joined the Chamber of Commerce in Silver Spring, and they've begun a new initiative with working in partnership with the county government and the police department to have our local businesses work in partnership to make sure that they're staying informed and doing all they can to make sure that downtown Silver Spring is safe. And then yesterday, was it just yesterday? Yeah, I think it was just yesterday, or the day before. No, Tuesday, the late night bill. It was Tuesday, we passed the late night safety plan bill. And what that will do is make sure that businesses that stay open late into the evening, early hours of the morning, I guess, have a safety plan in place, and that they do this in coordination with departments in our county government, including the police department. And so on last Friday night, I actually went out and visited a number of the late night establishments until about 2 a.m. in the morning. It's very much past my bedtime. But what I was glad to see is actually a number of the businesses that had already been working with our police department, putting in place these types of safety plans that will be required in the near future. So those are some things that I'm happy to talk more about, the safety plans. The other thing that I'm very proud of that we have done is the changes we've made to the recordation tax, which is a one-time tax that you pay when you buy or sell your home. And the money that from that tax goes to support school construction and transportation projects. And when we started our budget process a few months ago, we were experiencing a $207 million gap in our infrastructure, our capital infrastructure projects, our CIP. And that was mainly going to result in school projects being delayed.
And Councilmember Kristen Mink introduced a bill to increase the recordation tax. I worked with council members Fanny Gonzalez and Katz, as well as the council president, to amend that to make it more progressive so that it wasn't impacting people who were buying starter homes. But as you get a more and more expensive home, $1 million, over $1 million, you were spending more. Through doing this, we did two things. We closed the gap in our CIP, which is huge because that means right now, moving forward, we will not have big delays in our school projects, and we'll be able to fund our transportation projects on time. In addition to this, there's dedicated money going to eviction prevention. And this is really important because this also frees up money in our operating budget, which I'm sure we'll get into more conversations about budgets and our tax rate later. But that was a highlight, I think, for at least me, I'll say, in the last 6 months, to know that we're keeping these projects, you know, on schedule and moving forward because they're so needed. There's so much else to talk about, but I will end there and we can start the questions.
Okay, Laurie-Anne, I'm gonna give you the start. What do you think? The first question comes, I would like to know why we require a 10% property tax increase. It seems excessive.
I thought the same thing when we were presented with a 10% recommended budget from the executive. We met, what was it, a month and a half ago to, you know, every year the county executive will host the breakfast to present the budget. And coming out of the pandemic, I think we all expected that things would be different with this budget, given the, you know, exorbitant amount of money that was infused into budgets in the prior years during the pandemic. But as we all know, President Biden has called off the emergency resources and lifted the pandemic response. So went the funds. And so we were all shocked by this budget recommendation, and immediately I looked into how we were going to clean up our own house and find savings to lower that burden that we would have to impose on our residents. However, I knew that this 10% tax was going towards our schools, whatever amount we all agreed to. And so I knew that tough decisions had to be made. And over the last month, we've been making really tough decisions, like line by line, going through committee meetings to ensure that we found as much savings as possible. And so I'm really glad to have joined my colleagues earlier today in passing a 4.7% tax increase to fully fund our full contract. And there are really important initiatives all across the committees and departments. So yeah, looking forward to.
A very timely question, and I appreciate the context that Councilmember Sayles provides with regard to the question and the conversations that we had. When we were presented with the 10% tax proposal, it was to fully fund MCP. We decided that there were other ways to provide funding for CPS. One of the ways was to look at job vacancies. On any given day, there were between 1,200 and 1,500 vacant jobs within Montgomery County government. And the money for those jobs are just sitting there. They're not being spent, but they're allocated. So we, at the council, undertook an enormous review of the entire budget and started reducing jobs that had been vacant for 1 year, 2 years, and in some instances, 3 years, with monetary items attached to them that could not be spent on anything because there were no people to occupy those jobs. So we repurposed that funding. And through this process, we were able to bring the 10% tax rate down to 4.7%. And that 4.7% provides $215 million to MCPS. That is the largest single amount that has been given to MCPS since before the pandemic. And that amount allows them to fully fund their labor contracts and provide additional support for classrooms. It is more money than the superintendent originally asked for in her budget. That's what we did today. And it was a 7-4 vote to support the tax increase. Some individuals did not think it was high enough. One of my colleagues thought it was too high, but in the end, we ended up supporting the budget 10-1 because we know that we have to use money. And so that's what we did today. That's what 4.7% tax increase is doing. And I know it's going to be hard. And that's why we didn't accept the 10%. The council did the hard work of finding other ways to pay. That work is going to continue. And the county executive 5 years ago when he got elected that he wanted to help transform government. And so we're starting that process.
Thank you. So I was one of the 4 who didn't vote for the tax rate this today. Though I will say I was very close to where my colleagues came in, but I did have some reservations at the rate that we've set it because of some of the things that ultimately were left out of the budget. Things that are dependent upon us really having to pay out. And I'm afraid that moving forward, given what the economic outlook looks like right now, and knowing that we could be heading for a recession, I did have some reservations about voting for the proposed tax rate. One of my concerns, and I mentioned this with the budget when the county executive did present it to us in March, was the use of one-time dollars to pay for ongoing expenses in our budget. And that's something that continues to be a concern for me. But I will say, I think this council did a great job working together on this budget. I did vote for the overall budget because I think there's things in it that are very important. You know, as I look out today at many of you, I know folks here worked with Lord Charcoutian on community choice energy and getting that passed. And that was hard work to get that passed in Annapolis. One of the things that's in this budget is making sure that the county has the staff and consultants to help us move this project forward so that we actually do it correctly. And that all that work that she did doesn't go to waste and that we actually get CCE here in the county. So I think that is excellent. We did a number of other things. Council President Glass said regarding the funding for the schools. We were also able to fully fund the contracts with our public unions, which is very important to me because most of our budget goes to the people who work for this county. And they are so very important. And they've been through a great deal, as all of us have, through COVID. And so for me, that was also very important to fully fund those contracts. And so we can get into what else is in that budget, but I will say it has truly been an honor to work with this council, work with the staff at the county and all of you as we've been through this process.
Laurie-Anne, we'll start with you again. Next question is, what do you think of providing police with a subsidy for county housing?
I think that's an excellent idea. I advocated for that while I was on the campaign trail. I believe it's important for our officers to live where they are surveilling the community. I feel like it's important for us to be recruiting from the community. We have a cadet program in the city of Gaithersburg, and we have quite a few cadets who went into the career of public safety after those internship experiences. And so if our officers officers, law enforcement can afford to live in the community where they police, we can have improved relations between public safety and the community because they know each other. They go to the grocery store here, they know their neighbors, they walk their dogs in a dog park together. And so we need more incentives. I know they have a few for educators at the state level. And I know that we just work with the county executive to provide bonuses for our officers since staffing levels are low. We're at an all-time low, recruiting and retaining our officers. And so any other incentives that we have to think about to incentivize more officers to live and work here and police our communities with dignity and respect, I'm all for it.
One minute, okay, well, Kim, come on, okay. We know that the best way to have policing is to have police officers who know the community, who are from the community. And whether or not it's providing a subsidy for officers to live in our communities, we are offering officers a $20,000 signing bonus. That started a few months back, and since that's been offered, we've had a 50% enrollment. Right? Still not where the police department would like to be, but it is an improvement. And Councilmember Sayles mentioned the cadet program. Last year, in last year's budget, I added $200,000 to the cadet program. And the cadet program basically allows high school students and college students to learn more, to intern with the police department so that they can become police officers. And the best thing about the cadet program is the cadets look like our community. Their racial and gender makeup is Montgomery County. And so we need to support this. We need to encourage this, and we're going to continue doing so.
I'm not sure I have much to add if we want to go to the next question, because I agree with my colleagues. I would say the other thing to think about is not just housing subsidies in the county for police officers, but for other first line, frontline workers is really important, and our educators as well. And so I think this is something that we need to look at across the board, but agree starting with police would be a good idea. Sure.
This year we told 9/11 to not get through. Special call back later to say that there were insufficient staff to answer calls.
Unfortunately, no. Sorry. Last year, the question was last year we called 911 and could not get through. Dispatcher called back later to say they were insufficient staff to answer calls. Has this changed? I'll say no. Unfortunately, it has not. It is something that Council Member Katz chairs our public safety committee. It's something I've talked to him about, and we raised this at the public safety committee. And it is a problem, as Council President Glass said, not just with our police officers, but with our emergency workers, with our dispatch. We are low. We need to hire more people to work these jobs, and these are very tough jobs. There is a great deal of turnover in them, and we need to do better.
I'll just add to that we've supported our labor contracts there too, recognizing that inflationary pressures of competitiveness require us to keep up and require us to pay our staff the best we can.
We actually did in the union contracts this year, actually for folks who do work in 911, there were extended benefits for those positions. And so hopefully these are the type of things that we're going to build in incentives so people are attracted to the positions and they stay here.
Very good.
The next question is, will you be supporting the passage of the STEPS Act? What is it?
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, there's so many aspects and, to keep up with all the council. So, Councilmember Jawando and Councilmember, Meek introduced legislation, the, STEP Act. As we know, people of color have been disproportionately, pulled over and stopped by the police. And, even within our own jurisdiction, an Office of Legislative Oversight report that was released, showed that data hits right here at home. And so, we've seen what happened, when too many interactions between the police and the community. It resulted in a death recently, in another town. And so this act is, trying to decrease the amount of police and, driver interactions, by lessening charges for opportunities for police to pull you over and preventing the police from, searching your car for, minimal, grievances, infractions. So, like the things hanging from your mirror, a cracked headlight, any number of incidents that are now trying to ensure that officers can engage. But then you hear the other side of that coin, and so my colleagues will bring up to speed on that.
So thank you for the primer. I appreciate it. So now what do I think? So I agree that the intention of the bill is to address the racial disparities that exist in traffic violations. It's undeniable that data are clear. The question is, how do you remedy that? And my concern with the legislation is that we already have 200 people this year who've been hit while walking and biking, and 4 people have been killed. And so how do we stop more pedestrian incidents when we will be unable, if the law is passed, from stopping cars that have taillight problems, headlight problems, that don't have drivers, that don't have license plates? It makes it difficult to enforce certain laws to keep our roads safe. But I absolutely understand the intention of the bill. And where we are right now is a majority of the council has requested that the Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown provide an opinion as to whether or not the council even has the legal standing to introduce this bill, because most of the traffic infractions and laws are state laws. So can the council and the county supersede and instruct our police officers not to follow state law? And so we are all waiting for the Attorney General's opinion. The chair of the Public Safety Committee said that he will not have a hearing until that Attorney General opinion comes in, and the sponsors of the bill have asked for the Attorney General's opinion. So we're just waiting to see what right now.
Thank you. So this is an issue I worked on when I was the mayor in the city of Tacoma Park, working very closely with our police department. And the way that we looked at this issue was to change how our police were doing traffic enforcement in the areas. And instead of leaving it up to the discretion of individual officers, they were given strict guidelines on where and when somebody could be pulled over for a traffic violation. It was much more targeted traffic enforcement, looking at areas like state routes to schools, or where we know people were not following, stopping at a stop sign. When we did this, we decreased substantially the number of interactions between police officers and residents. But at the same time, we also saw a decrease in collisions. So sometimes when people talk about this, that's important to understand. And I agree with Council President Glass that we need to look at how we're implementing this, because we don't want to be damaged to our Vision Zero goals. But there are ways to do this, where we work with our police department and look at how we can do better targeted traffic enforcement. I think President Glass said it best in terms of what we're waiting for, because we need to make sure that any legislation we move forward with actually is things that we can do as the county council. And so waiting for the AG's opinion. And we also did send a letter from the T&E Commission because the state is actually not collecting the data they're actually supposed to be doing. And that came out, and Councilmember Glass and I sent the letter to the state saying you need to be collecting data appropriately.
I'm going to give you one more brief question. The questions from the audience. The next question is, what do you think of expansions of several successful programs that have helped reduce crime? Some of the programs are Truancy Court, Drug Court, Mental Health Court, Street Outreach Network.
I think these programs are fantastic, and they're all included in the budget we just passed today and have been included in budgets in recent years. So whoever asked the question, you're on the right track because we already have these programs. County Housing, of course we do. We have these programs. We're continuing to fund these programs. They're good programs. Thank you.
A recent study shows that homelessness increased 56% in Montgomery County this year. What is the council doing to remedy this?
Okay, sure. So again, another tenant in my smart agenda, making a living in our county more affordable. And our budget reflects that. The council allocated more than 77 million in funds for the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, which aims to preserve and increase the supply of affordable housing, maintain existing housing in a safe and sanitary condition, preserve the safety and quality of a residential and community area, ensure fair and equitable relations between landlords and tenants, and support the success of common ownership communities. We also supported the production and preservation of affordable housing by allocating 57 million to the Housing Initiative Fund, and the council also funded the Housing Opportunities Commission with an $8 million budget. And I'll let my colleague tell you the additional investments we made in affordable housing to keep people housed.
That's a lot of money to keep people housed. Really proud that we've taken those steps. And that builds upon what we've done over the last number of years. During the height of the pandemic, I introduced a $2 million special appropriation to provide eviction rental assistance. And that $2 million grew to more than $100 million during the pandemic. Thank you, President Biden. Thank you, Democrats in Congress. And yes, thank you to the General Assembly and former Governor Hogan as well. Provide state money for that. That money, we still have a few million dollars from that we've learned during this budget process have been unused. So we're going to use that. We're going to continue these investments, but we are continuing to invest in facilities. And I got to hand it to County Executive Elrich, who just 2 years ago, when I was the lead for homelessness, said that we need a new facility, a year-round facility. We partnered with the Montgomery County Coalition for the Homeless and built our first year-round men's shelter, which is in North Bethesda, maybe just right on the border of your district, just on the border of the district. And it is a beautiful facility. It's on Neville Street, right off Rockville Pike. And we need to do more of those. And I've been talking to the county executive about finding smaller projects that we can afford to do more of these throughout the county. But unfortunately, at the heart of the question is that this is not unique to Montgomery County. And because we have Eastern Avenue, just a few blocks from here, we know that people come back and forth. So this is a regional issue, and it's something that the Council of Governments just talked about in its most recent meeting.
Thank you. Yes, we actually did go over the statistic that was provided is from the point in time report, and the Council of Governments did just get a report on that last week. I am glad in our budget this year that we actually put money in the budget this year to do some needed repairs at Neville Street. It is so unfortunately used so much. I will say this is a place we agree on a lot of things. I may disagree with my colleagues here, because this is actually an area I was disappointed in our budget this year. Because we did not fully fund the overflow sheltering that the county executive had sent over to us. As well as I don't think we funded enough our partners such as Interfaith Works. And I was just on a call with the executive director, Courtney Hall of Interfaith Works the other day, because we have seen a fairly large increase of unhoused people near the Silver Spring Metro. And because people were complaining about it, unfortunately, the police went in and started removing people, which is not something we normally do in Montgomery County. And Interfaith Works went there and they were able to place each of those people that were there in Progress Place. But I got the phone call late one night because Progress Place is completely full now. And there was another group of unhoused people that are going to be moved, but there's no place for them to go because Progress Place doesn't have any beds anymore. So for me, that's a place when we see this increase, and I mentioned it today, this is information we received as we were doing the budget. So it's, in real time. But I think as a council, we need to be working with the county executive and come back to this issue. Thank you.
And I'll also add, since Progress Place was mentioned, there is funding in this budget to provide more security for Progress Place. We all hear about people outside of Progress Place walking up and down Georgia Avenue. I used to live in South Silver Spring and did that walk all the time. And so there is going to be more money for more security to keep everybody, including the residents of Progress Place.
Sorry, and our state delegation, because we should thank them, did actually get us some money for Progress Place as well, to have an outside seating area for the folks who are there, which is really important because Neville Street has that. And what that allows people to do is have a space during the day in which to be, rather than kind of walking around and other things. So that is coming to Progress Place, and we really have to thank our state delegation for bringing that money to us.
And last but not least, I'll just mention that right before we started the budget, I introduced legislation, a zoning text amendment to accelerate how quickly we can build affordable housing that will offer up to 35% affordable housing with at least 2 commercial uses. So we'll pick that back up shortly now that the budget's been decided. So looking forward to you weighing in and following that legislation and its hopeful successful package. Thank you.
I'm worried about what you will do about rent stabilization.
I think I said this before, that I'm very supportive of rent stabilization. I was the mayor of Tacoma Park for a number of years. We had a very strong rent stabilization program there. I saw some things there that I think we could emulate around the county, and some things I want to improve upon. Right now, as I think everybody in this room knows, there are 2 rent stabilization bills one's an anti-gouging bill and one is the Home Act is a rent stabilization bill. Looking at both of those bills, none of us are on that, right? All 3 of us, and this is the 3 of us who are not on either one of those bills. And I will speak for myself and say that I'm looking forward to working with colleagues to look at both these bills, to look at what amendments that we might be able to propose to kind of bring people together, working with community groups and others to really move forward so that we put in place some form of rent stabilization. For me, rent stabilization is a tool. It is not the end goal. The end goal is making sure we have stable, safe housing with predictable increases in rents. Because right now what happens is some people experience really high peaks, especially when we see inflation, and that leads to instability, that leads people to having to move out of neighborhoods, children having to move out of schools. And what we need to do is have a solid rent stabilization put in place that smooths out those increases so that people can plan for their futures.
So we're in a housing crisis. It is too expensive to live in our community, and we have to figure out how to solve that. And I know the 2 bills are 2 different ways to solve it. One of them is by having a hard cap of 3%, And the other one is having at 8% plus inflation. And the three of us have not signed on to either bill because we recognize that both need work. And for me, the big question is this: how do we provide help for people today while also ensuring that we're continuing to build housing for people tomorrow, for our kids and our grandkids who are not moving to Montgomery County, by the way. It is too expensive to live here. And so if we want our kids and grandkids to live here because we have to have a place for them, for our tax base, and for a whole lot of other reasons, we need to figure out what steps we take that don't deter the creation of new housing. Council of Governments last year said that Montgomery County has to build about 70,000 homes over the next decade. We are woefully behind. And so I am waiting for the data and a few more reports to come out to help determine which of these bills, if either of these bills, do two things: help people today and ensure that there are homes for tomorrow. Because if we only protect people who are in homes today and do not build any new apartments, the housing crisis only gets worse. And we've seen that in other jurisdictions. And so I'm just being very mindful and thoughtful about this.
I would agree with my colleagues. What more can I add about these two competing bills? We're going to be picking them up after we come back from a brief recess to discuss. And so I'm hoping that this body, we've received countless emails already about different amendments that we can make. But as a homeowner, I'm so glad that I was able to refinance my property before the pandemic. My sister, who held off, who said she was going to sell her house, she's still living in Silver Spring, and she's pissed about her mortgage, and she cannot refinance. I'm able to plan ahead. I'm able to know how much I'm going to have to pay over the next year, the next 30 years. And so our residents don't have that same luxury, our renters. And in a market where, you know, my costs, landlord costs go up, it's unfortunate that they have to pass those costs on to renters. So we want to give our renters a sense of security. And I think one of these bills, or a balanced approach to these bills, will result in some security for our renters so we can keep them housed. We don't want unhoused residents in our community because that's an extra burden on us as taxpayers. So we're going to be working on that and look forward to hearing from each and every one of you about that.
How can you help bring back police patrols, specifically bicycle patrols to Silver Spring?
Thank you. So I think I know who asked this question. So our police department is doing a number of things in the Silver Spring area. One of the things is that they did actually increase the number of foot patrols during the late afternoon, and they just actually, now that we have daylight later into the evening, they move those later as well. But we can request and ask of Commander McBain and Captain Reed where they are on the bicycle patrols. Actually, they're here. So I'm getting, they're coming. They're coming. People, they're coming. I think now that we have the nicer weather and we're done with the winter, that we will see more of the bike patrols. Are they coming soon? Yeah. Okay.
Not during our safety blocks, there's going to be 6 new bike patrols.
Oh, 6 new bike patrols. Yep, that's perfect. This is definitely throwing my chief of staff. Everyone.
A majority of the council is currently backing Bill 15-23, which allows rent increase. Oh, this is another rent increase question. Let's go on something.
Yeah, it's a concern.
Tonight there was a shooting at Wheaton Metro. The county wants businesses to pay for their security. How will we make Metro safe for Montgomery County residents?
Anytime that there's a shooting, whether it's in our community, at a local establishment, in our church or grocery store, it's devastating for all of us. This is not the community that we bought into, and this is not the community that we envisioned for our residents, my daughter, for my family, for my neighbors. And so we started off the conversation with the talk about public safety. You know, we're trying everything in our power to ensure that our students, our young people have access to mental health resources, have access to job prep programs, out of school time, recreation activities to do. We're trying everything in our power, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And so, you know, there's no excuse for violence in our community, and every instance it's heartbreaking, and just not knowing what even, you know, precipitated this action. We have to go back to guns. We have to get guns out of our community. That starts at the federal level, that starts, you know, with our state partners. We are all committed to that effort. And so it's heartbreaking to hear that this has happened in broad daylight. Yeah, I hope the culprit is found and dealt with appropriately, but we have to get rid of guns in our community.
So for those of you who saw me passing my phone just 2 minutes ago, it was the NBC story saying that the individual who was shot is still alive. And I wanted my colleagues to see that. So it's about the guns. And just last week, when the federal district court in Eastern Virginia said that 18-year-olds, it might be unconstitutional to limit guns to anyone over 18. I mean, give me a break. Like, where does this end? And here in Montgomery County, last year alone, we passed a law that prohibited ghost guns from public spaces like the metro station, like Veterans Plaza, and it was struck down. So we are doing what we can. And I communicate with Metro General Manager Randy Clark on a regular basis. And Metro ridership is the highest it has been since the pandemic, and continues to increase. But it's incidents like this that turn people away. And as much as I hope Montgomery County can pave the way to eradicate guns, we need our federal leaders. We need a new Supreme Court, right? This is not the 17th, 18th century militia. And I'm worried about this Eastern District of Virginia and 18-year-olds. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
So I agree with my colleagues, and you know, even just the other day, Governor Westmore signed some gun safety legislation, and literally before he could put his pen down, the NRA they were suing the state of Maryland over it. So it's a real issue, and it's one of the things that just to touch upon when the Council President Glass and I did the public safety community conversation in Silver Spring. We brought in every town gun safety and someone who specifically works with trauma, because unfortunately my family has been touched by these issues, and it's something our whole community is experienced, the trauma from gun violence, and people react to trauma in very different ways. And when we have these conversations, we have to be very cognizant of that. And so I think it's also important that we're advocating, we're pushing back, and that we're also acknowledging and figuring out the help that we need as a community to address the trauma that we're experiencing.
Will the council tell the governor to kill the 270 toll lane project?
The governor killed the 270 toll lane project. The governor is asking questions about the Transurban deal that Governor Hogan put together. And Transurban said, you know what, we don't want to answer your questions. We don't want to go in the direction you're going in, and they walked away. There is no plan. That's the bottom line. There is no plan. I've spoken with Secretary Wiedefeld about it. They know where the council is. They know where the county executive is. They know what Montgomery County's thoughts are. Do they do something? I don't know. But right now there is no plan. Transurban has walked away.
But we did get record funding for bus rapid transit to come to the county, which is what we negotiated last year. So I'm glad the governor delivered, and that will be coming soon.
Kate, this question was primarily for yourself. Apparently, cell phone towers can now be built 30 feet from homes and apartments. Do we willing to read this issue and back them up?
Thank you for this question. So this is something I worked on as the mayor of Tacoma Park, and we actually have a pretty good law on the books in the city of Tacoma Park regarding this. You know, I'm going to be honest with you, this is a very complicated issue, and at the moment, when I've talked to my colleagues here, I think there are a lot of priorities that we are looking at, and you know, I'm happy to talk to people about it, but I do not believe this is something the county council is going to be picking up in the near term.
So I know cell towers are something that we've all, that people have been talking about for the last 2 or 3 years. The reason the last council acted on cell towers was because we were the only jurisdiction in the DC region that had not adopted a local ordinance, and we were going to be sued by the federal government. DC, Prince George's, Howard, Fairfax, Loudoun, Arlington, they'd all passed ordinances. Montgomery County had not. And so rather than be sued and accept what the FTC was going to give us, we adopted our own. And our own is much more friendly to homeowners and residents than some of the other jurisdictions. And so if anyone has any concerns about it, I encourage you to look at what other jurisdictions did and what the setbacks were. And you will see that ours is much more reasonable, but we were going to be sued.
Now that the council has expanded to 11 members, you've been working for 6 months. What have you noticed as an impact of this change?
You only know that.
Well, you know, just being, you know, moving from the city council and onto the now double the size on the city council in Gaithersburg, I was the only woman there. And now I have 5 other women to collaborate with, build consensus with, and 5 men who bring, you know, wisdom and experience of past council business. And so I feel like, you know, in my opinion, I look forward to hearing what our president's going to say, but I feel like the conversations have been more nuanced. You know, my colleague who isn't here, Marilyn Balcom, she said the mama showed up and we're getting things done. So I'll take credit for that. And so, yeah, I'm glad to have known every single one of my colleagues prior to being on the council, knowing their experience, their passion. So it's been just really, really good to work with like-minded individuals.
I'm a mama's boy. I grew up in a home with a single mom who worked 2 jobs for me. I love being around strong, independent women, and I love having these 2 and other 4 colleagues. Genuinely, it is a wonderfully collaborative dynamic. They are thoughtful, they are detailed, and I'm glad they're here.
Right.
Again.
I just agree, I think having the one thing I will say is that, Council President Glass says this all the time about how this is the most diverse county council we have. And particularly when I look at the 6 women who came on to the county council altogether, I think it is so important that we have 6 women. We have 6 women who come from very different life experiences and different perspectives. And the fact that we're all working together is really important. And so, it's really a privilege to work with everyone.
And just to round that out, so of the 11 members, 6 are women. We have 2 Black council members, 2 Latino council members, our very first Asian American Pacific Islander, Kristen Mink, and I am still the only openly LGBTQ+. This is the most diverse council ever, and it is a beautiful representation of.
Thank you. Given the lack of state funding for emergency rental assistance, how can Montgomery County help?
So getting back to the recordation tax, that I was very excited about before, because now, because of the recordation tax that we passed, we have dedicated funding to go to, and we have a number of programs for eviction prevention, but now we will have a dedicated stream of money going towards eviction prevention. This year, it's 7.5 million. What we're projecting moving forward is $10 to $12 million each year. And we can augment that through our operating budget. But the important thing is that's the base that we're going to be starting with through the recordation tax. And like I said, there are a number of different programs too, and Councilmember Sayles talked about a number of them to provide assistance for folks. I will say one of the things that I would like to see us take on and work with the county exec is that a lot of our rental assistance programs, what happens is that people can only apply for them when they start to get behind in their rent. And that adds anxiety to people, that you already have to be behind before you can qualify. So I'd like to see a way that we might be able to revise those programs.
And just to provide some context on that, because some people might not think that that amount of money is a lot. Before the pandemic, we only had about $2-3 million. And so we're now in double digits. It's much better. And I remember my first year on the people serving the Health and Human Services Committee, we asked about the rental assistance program, which was much smaller, more straightforward. And the subsidy that they provided was only $200. And I remember asking, okay, so how long has it been $200? 20 years. So the first year that we inquired about this, we increased it from $200 to $400. And now we're continuing to add more. So we are making really good progress here.
They talk about,
Could you stand up?
look, they talk about $30 million for rent subsidies. That's what they say, right? Oh, well, our bill is so bad because we're going to provide $30 million in rent subsidies. Is this the same as that, or is this different than that? And if so, where's the $30 million? That's because I'm confused about this.
For their bill. I don't know what the name is.
So there's no
We're not
30
signed on to Councilmember Bonnie Gonzalez bill that proposes a $30 million subsidy to go towards the rental assistance fund. But this particular fund, we can guarantee that $8 million will be set aside because of recordation taxes. That's for anyone who buys or sells a home. And that's something that we've never been able to do before. And as Council President Glass mentioned, he took away my talking point, but they doubled the rental assistance subsidy.
So my point was this, is that they publicly advertised, it wasn't going to be in their bill, but it was going to be in the budget. That's what they said.
That's what they
$30 million for rent
We're all
subsidies
gonna
because
tune
their
in to
bill was
hear.
proposing up to 15% rent increase. Show me the money.
That's what we're going to be asking during these upcoming policy discussions. We want to see that money too. And,
Right.
most of these, that bill also proposes that any new construction for the next 15 years won't have to, comply with whatever is. And so, we have lots of
Okay, so this is
decisions to
still
make.
ongoing.
It's still
Okay.
ongoing, yes, and it's going to resume very shortly. So I hope to see you signed up to testify.
Does the county have any policies, programs, or citizen guidance for panhandlers at major intersections?
So the answer is no. And this is a complex situation because handlers, people who are on the corners, it's unsafe. And so the goal of legislating it would be to make the intersection safer. We all want safer intersections, but when you recognize and acknowledge who these individuals are, many of them are unhoused. And some of them have mental illness. And how should we best help them? By criminalizing their behavior, which is actually what the law would require. And so it is a very difficult ongoing conversation. Former council member Craig Rice introduced legislation a number of years ago. The point of it is to ban panhandling at intersections, and it did not move forward because a number of the homeless providers argued against recognizing the other needs that these individuals have and not wanting to criminalize homelessness. It's complex, I get it. We don't want anyone to be hurt when they're out there. I don't think personally that homelessness should be criminalized.
That's why we need to pass universal basic income. Let's call on our president to do so.
I don't know what that is. What are you talking about?
So we are actually underway in the second year of our pilot study for universal basic income, and that provides a basic subsidy. Currently, the pilot is providing $800 a month to a subset of folks who were identified a year ago, and they are able to save up, pay bills, plan better for their families. We just have to figure out a dedicated funding stream, but we are moving forward with continuing to fund the program again in this year's budget. And we'll be evaluating the benefits, the savings that programs like this, Alaska has a universal basic income. There's lots of places, California, I think they just passed one in Prince George's County in one of their municipalities. And so it's catching on. We just have to ensure funding stream to make it.
Thank you. What is being done to attract new business to Montgomery County?
Well, if you visit the Visit Montgomery website or social media, we just launched our Visit Montgomery page, our Visit Montgomery marketing campaign. We also have a Be Next marketing campaign with the county's Economic Development Corporation. And so they're traveling near and far. They just came back from Taiwan to tout the, incredible life that you can live if you move your business here to Montgomery County. That's why we wanted to fund our schools to ensure that people are still attracted to the county because of our schools, our incredibly talented workforce. And so those are some of the attributes that we're trying to tout and broadcast near and far to attract businesses here. And if you go to the county's website for permitting or economic development, you'll see an entire suite of incentive packages that we offer businesses small and large to move here, to stay here, and to grow their businesses here.
So this question is in part why I created the Economic Development Committee, to have more time at council. There's a number of ways, a number of things I can share, and I'll defer to Councilmember Stewart to talk about North Bethesda and the exciting things that are happening there. But on any given day, Montgomery County is the third or fourth largest hub of bio life sciences in the country. Here in Montgomery County, not the DC region. And that is incredible. Mostly focused in Rockville and Gaithersburg area. But it is a true testament to this community, to the federal assets that we have from FDA and NIH in this. And the county is currently in the process of updating some of our grant programs so that entrepreneurs can get funding from the county to help launch their companies. We're working on it. We continue to refine it as industries and sectors continue to change and the nature of entrepreneurship evolves. And so that these laws continue to do. But there's a lot going on here. And if you haven't been to Bethesda in the last 6 months or so and seen Marriott's brand new headquarters, it is beautiful. And the reason Marriott is still in Montgomery County is because they wanted to be in downtown Bethesda as opposed to an office park, because their young employees did not want to go to the suburban office park by Montgomery Mall. They wanted to take the red line or one of the buses to go to downtown Bethesda and walk around. So as we think about growth and development, we need to think about that too.
Yeah, so what are we doing to attract businesses here? It's what Council President Glass just said. It's investing in our infrastructure, it's investing in our schools, it's investing in our communities, because that's why people want to live here, and that's why the companies want to come here and open up. And again, I'm just gonna say that's why the recordation test was so important. Because we are funding those projects and moving forward. In North Bethesda, we are moving forward with a lot of the biotech businesses. And one of the investments that is happening there is a research institute that is moving forward with. It's a partnership with the University of Maryland, the University Medical Centers, and a number of folks to actually create a hub for advancing artificial intelligence research. And it's a great start to this partnership. The other thing that we're doing, we're working very hard on, is the federal government under President Biden is putting together what's called ARPA-H. And again, this is building on the advances that have been happening in biotech. It's similar, if folks remember, that it was called DARPA. They did with the military. This is with the medical and biotech sciences. And so it's to bring together the best and the brightest in sciences to advance cures for diseases and other things. And they want to house it outside of the gates, they call it, of like NIH and other things. I see some people nodding, you know what I'm talking about. North Bethesda is in the running together. And we're working really hard, and my time's up, okay.
It's exciting.
If I could just briefly share some investments. The council approved a $3.2 million for the county's incubators and our economic partnerships. Over 1.2 million supports Black and Latino owned businesses. We also approved nearly 11.1 million in the budget for the Bethesda, Silver Spring, and Wheaton urban districts. And we also had enough funding to start the newly formed Friendship Heights Urban District. And then, as I mentioned, the Council's Economic Development Corporation has almost $6 million to continue attracting and promoting businesses in the community. Just one more thing, because we are in talking about Silver Spring, and I think, you know, we have a lot of new businesses in Silver Spring. Nike just opened. We're getting Uniqlo is coming to downtown Silver Spring. We have a number of restaurants that have opened, the Black Lion, the Breakfast Club. You know, there is a lot happening, a lot of investment that is happening in downtown Silver Spring. And, you know, there's going to be more to come soon there. There are a couple of projects that are coming online that are very exciting. We just did the ribbon cutting for the Leggett Center, which will be housing for older residents, 62 and older. And this is a great project because it's also been done in partnership with Habitat for Humanity and Holy Cross Hospital, and we'll have a wellness center there. And it's right next door to a brand new aquatic center that will be opening this fall. So I just wanted to also add that to the conversation about economic development.
And that's on Second Avenue by the Rancho and the courthouse.
We're going to wrap it up here at 8:30, so if each of you could take 5 minutes or less to wrap up, appreciate it.
Well, I'm always happy to be of service and be responsive to this community, regardless of me living up county. I'm just honored to be able to represent every corner of our county, and I know how engaged Silver Spring Tacoma Park area is, so I know when I come here, I make sure I have all of my facts. I have an incredible staff that been incredibly helpful and being responsive to every part of our community. And so having events like this, not just during the election, is a very important reminder of just how engaged our residents are and how helpful you are for helping us shape our policy decisions, make votes on the council. And you all are the ones who keep your ear to the ground. And so I'm just grateful to be able to live in a county where on a Thursday night, you could be anywhere, but you're here with us. And so just really appreciate you and appreciate being here with my colleagues as well. I'll have some cards. Don't hesitate to contact our office for anything. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
I also appreciate you all coming out tonight on a beautiful day. And so I'll share with you just things I'm working on and you'll be hearing about in the weeks and months ahead. Just before the budget was introduced, I introduced a bill, the Safe Streets Act, working to make sure that our roads are safer for everybody. One of the things, it does 4 things. One of the things it does is it's going to ban turning on red light, turn on red, right turn on red in many of our downtown areas. Recognizing that 75% of pedestrian incidents happen at intersections. Badly driven. People are walking and people aren't looking at them because they're looking left as they're turning right. And so we're going to do that. We're also going to work with MCPS and the Department of Transportation to do thorough reviews anytime a child or an adult is hit walking to or from school. You know, one of the most sacred things that we should provide for, letting our kids go to school safely and come home intact. And it breaks my heart whenever I see an alert on my phone with an incident for an elementary, middle, or high school student. So it's going to require a thorough review there. Another thing, getting back to policing, it's going to require the county executive to have an automated traffic plan. If we want to truly reduce racial disparities and have safe roads at the same time, we can implement more cameras. And that's what I'm requesting that the county executive do in this legislation. Share a plan for more cameras so that we can reduce on-street presence, but still make sure that bad actors receive tickets. Because I think it is far better to get hit in the wallet than to hit somebody on the street. And then so that is the Safe Streets Act. Another thing that will be coming forward is about economic development. I've requested from the Office of Legislative Oversight, the Council's Research Division, to look into our regulations here in Montgomery County to see how we make our businesses, how many hoops we make our businesses jump through to open up, to become entrepreneurial, whether it's a coffee shop or a biotech company. You know, we have things in place that might have been put in place for good reason 3 decades ago. But in this modern economy, do we still need them? So we're doing a thorough review to see how we can do better. And once I get that report, I'll work with my colleagues, particularly my colleagues on the Economic Development Committee. And I know that Councilmember Sayles is very interested in this and has her own proposals too. So that we're going to work together to see how we can red tape, introduce some green tape, and fast track a lot of businesses opportunities here. So those are 2 things that are happening in the next few months. But in the meantime, it is a pleasure working with them. It is a pleasure living in this community. Half of you I see when I'm walking my dogs on any given day. And I appreciate it when you let me walk my dogs, and you text me problems about other things later. Tony, I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at Kim. But thank you, and let's keep making so much spring improvements.
Great. Thank you everyone for having us this evening. It's great to be here. One of the things we've been doing, mostly before the budget got really hot and heavy the last couple of weeks, was really being out in the community and doing meetings like this and working with neighborhood associations. And so that is a thing that we really like to do in my office. And now that the weather is nicer, one of the things that we want to do more of is really get out and do more of walking around neighborhoods. I know a number of folks, and introduce Paul Ellis, my deputy chief of staff, who is here. He handles transportation, parking issues, all those good things. I can't believe no one asked a question about the purple line. But okay, we'll talk about it later. But it's coming. But issues around safety around the purple line, traffic and other issues, and what we're going to do in the future about parking. Those are things that our office is working on, and want to talk and come out and be with you all as we tackle those issues. I imagine public safety is, that's something we're going to continue working on with each and every one of you. As we talked to here, there are these national trends. We need to fight the gun violence, and most importantly, it's making sure we feel safe in our communities. And so we will continue to be doing that. The other thing that now that we're coming to the end of the budget, we want to get back to is some of the work we began looking into after the fire at the Arrive. We worked, and I've talked to my colleague here, Councilmember Sayles, with Delegate Charkoudian on the bill she had in Annapolis that unfortunately just ran out of time. But when we actually started looking at that fire and some other ways that we do our fire inspections and permitting, it started to raise a lot of questions on what are some things that we can do better. And looking forward to working with my colleagues on looking at particularly apartments and what are some of the things we can do better to make sure people are informed and make sure that they live safely in their home. So thank you all. I'm glad to be here.
I'd just like to put in the plug our annual picnic, which is going to be on June 24th this year. Watch your emails for further information. Most of the people you want to see and talk to will be there. And that's all for tonight. Thanks for coming.